All right, we should be live now.
And we have participants.
Welcome everybody to webinar number 22.
22.
All right. I don't think I have anything formal to say myself. What you got? You got anything?
No, I don't have anything. What do we got coming up? Garden Railway Show?
We have the Garden Railway Show. We have Eurowest in California.
Eurowest, yeah. It's on our on our newsletter. Where is our newsletter? I got it on one of my pages here.
So the Garden Railway Show, folks, is happening the week of the 20th of June in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, and then NMRA. So we got the National Garden Railway Convention. We have Eurowest in San Carlos, and then the NMRA outside of St. Louis.
I think you're going to that. When is that one?
That is August. So I think I got a little bit of time on that one.
Hot summer days. I wonder what the weather's going to be like out there in Colorado.
In St. Louis in August.
In the hot summer August.
Should be fine.
Good luck with you. Bring plenty of towels. Anyways, welcome all. Don't know. Let's see how our discussion goes today. So it is pretty seat of the pants, I think, today. Today's topic is covers our newsletter article number 3 for 2022. That's the what months are those? Does that I always get them mixed up? Is it June, July, or May, June?
January, February, March, April, May, June.
May, June. And the topics are some methods that Rick wrote about on how to stop a train. And I wrote an article regarding the block macros, which is a new addition to the events. And obviously that's a really nerdy topic. And unfortunately, going deep on it may not be a good idea. So we'll figure out how that goes.
No, go ahead. Feel free.
No, yeah, I'm long-winded enough. That's why I'm going to hand it off to you first.
I'm so not prepared.
Shh, don't say that.
I mean, I am so prepared.
I am so prepared on the non-existent level.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, if you want, I'll kind of kick it off. How's that?
Well, if you want, that's fine. I was going to, but yeah, feel free.
Yeah, if you're not.
I can make some notes while you're talking.
I'll give you another 20 minutes to figure that out in your head.
Well, you're gonna keep it short.
I'm hoping it doesn't take me 20 minutes. This is such the block macro. And let me go ahead and share the screen. Oh, we do have a chat question. Oh, hello. Thanks, Carlos. Welcome to the webinar. We're just getting right into it, obviously. Okay. So the block macro, it really is kind of a mystery to me as to why we needed a macro on that, and I kind of go through it. I'm going to quickly kind of go through the containers in here. You can see I have a number of blocks in the setup here. Let's just kind of open one of these up. Now, this is a preset block. Actually, let me open up block number 4 because I'm actually going to delete the entry so you can see what the containers are. So, and this is sort of the part of the mystery to this block macro. So for those who don't sort of know what I refer to as blocks, let me go to the track plan here. In a loop, you basically have your stopping sections, and so this is a basic example, right? So a block I consider is any sort of track, part of a section of track where you can only allow one train to be in that section. So here we have the signal lights here. obviously from this K4 or the signal signal 4 to signal 1. I don't want two trains in there because eventually, if it's unmonitored, your trains are going to crash into each other. So we basically have 4 blocks on this layout. So that's between signal 1 and signal 2. That's our first block. Signal 2 and 3, second block. Signal 3 to signal 4 is our fourth block or third block. And then we cycle back to our first. So those are your blocks. When you're automating your layout, essentially you want to control your blocks. And as I said before, the idea is you want to prevent 2 trains from entering into a block. So at the last software update that we had, which by the way, I guess since we're on topic, let's look at what our system version is. So your current for the CS3s, your software versions are 2.4.0 parentheses 5 right here. Okay, you guys all might have newer hardware numbers since I actually have one of the earlier CS3s. It's even before they did the inking change and relabeled it. Anyways, okay, so back to our blocking. And obviously, if you guys are really unfamiliar with events, hopefully, it might be a little confusing for you. Anyways, the blocks here, and the only way you can access, by the way, is if you have your extended events on. And how I know this is you see the question marks up here. This is basically your indicator that tells you you're in the extended modes for events, which is sort of an advanced function. And the question marks basically indicate that it's not really doing an action. In other words, when I say action, sorry, close that out. This would be considered an action. You're actually switching a signal or you're switching a module. The conditionals or the macro evaluations here, let's go back into edit events, will not change anything. All it's going to do is it's going to look at what state this loaded entry is. So here's the entry contact. And let's say if we're focusing on this block here, signal 1, or from signal 4 to signal 1, then the train is going in the clockwise direction. K4 would actually be your entry point. Okay, and then you can actually click on this and you can change the status of what it's reading. Is it going to read it as a non-occupied state, or is it going to read it as an occupied state, which would be yellow? Your exit contacts would be basically, there's 2 ways you can go about it. I will do it this way. There's 2 ways. You can either have a contract here, which I know in some of the software, computer generated software, track automation stuff, they would want to have like a contact at the exit point. So this is the last point of contact for this block. So this could be the exit contact. And normally the way I look at it is, especially in the methods that we've written about, I always have my contacts after the signal. And it's going to really depend on how the block macro is applied. So I can't really give you a hard answer if you want to know which is better. It just depends on the method you employ, I think. So essentially what happens is, if you look at it, this entry point into this separate block is the same as an exit point of the previous block. So I only have one rather than needing like 2 extra contacts, or 1 extra contact, one before and one after. So you can look at it that way. So then I would have a contact here. And okay, so there's also a container here for signal if. And again, this does not switch these. It's only going to read what the value is for what you put in this entry. Now here's the confusing thing. You cannot control this. So let's say I want it to be green. And this is just a matter of how it works. And I got to be honest with you, I'm not 100% because it was doing, there's 2 reasons I guess I could say. 1, there was no explanation. 2, I've been doing block control on a different level than this. Whether it's more primitive or more advanced, I can't tell you. It's up to you to decide that. But watch what happens if I drag this signal and I put it in here. It won't be green. It only wants to display as red. And I can't really go in here and I can't change that value. So whatever goes in this first initial block container can either be a signal, an if, or a breaking macro, which is generally what I use this for. Well, actually, it's not a break macro. It's actually just a break. But it can only be in the stop state. Okay. The weird thing about this is that in order for this block macro to be valid, you either need to have all 5 of these elements filled in, or maybe you can have less elements. I don't know if you actually need to have the following block macro. And so there's an inherent issue that I have with this is that now what happens is I need to go into the separate macro here. Let me just open up this previous one. So this is a block 1 macro. I actually had to add a block 2 macro into it just to fill in these containers. Now the problem is I have 5 elements here, or maybe 4 elements, because I think these last 2, this K1 and this one, and this one work together in sort of a tandem way. The thing is, in order for the first one to be true, and because this is also a container, this one also has to be true. And there's this cascading effect which doesn't make sense to me, and I can't quite figure it out. So in order for this one to be true, it has to read itself, and it has to read this block that's also contained within it. And in order for that to be true, you're following along this block. So basically, in this simple layout structure, it's cyclical. None of these can be true unless the next block is true. So the problem I have, again, is I didn't have any instructions. I don't know necessarily how it applies. Okay. So that's sort of a lot of gist in the article on how basically what these containers are, but how they work together. Now, the other thing that I've kind of maybe figured out, again, these last 2 blocks work in tandem. In other words, if you open up, there's an option here, and it's called a self block or central block. I don't know what the central block is supposed to mean. The self block, I'm just kind of assuming it's going to control itself to some degree. But it's permanently set for this delay setting. And my guess is that it needs to wait for this position to match in order for block 2 to be activated. So if you guys are able to kind of follow this sort of haphazard discussion, there's something you may consider if you're trying to figure out how to work this. These 2 might actually, this might rely on what this setting here is in the 5th block. Okay, so the other issue that I kind of couldn't quite sort out is that, let me close this up here. Where do I trigger this block? And so if you think about it, and let's open up the events here. The first thing that I did was I set up a container because that was the only way that I could initiate a block. So that's FS1, that's here. Okay, and I've got it triggered based on contact number 2, which I'm really sorry for it that I have to rearrange all these windows all the time. They don't give me a whole lot of space to work with. So I can shrink this down just a little bit. So this is contact 2 down here. So I wrote that contact 2 is what's going to start this block read. And this is the block 1. And basically, am I still in edit mode? Yeah. Oops. Let's open that up. So it's basically now it's going to read whether or not, rearranging my windows again. It's going to read whether or not this is set for stop. And because K2 is the one that triggered it, this could be incorrect. I put K2 as the entry contact. Okay, this is the entry contact. And it's like, are we referring to the entry contact into this block here? So in other words, should it be K1? Or does it need to be K2 because that's where it triggers on this left-hand side, or I mean the right-hand side. Okay. So hopefully you guys can see right now. If you guys are confused, I can't tell you how I felt or the other way around. If I'm confused, I don't really know where you guys are, even on this explanation, because the problem is there's all these variables that I cannot answer correctly on how the block macro is applied. So the other thing too is, because these are all evaluative, I can't really do anything like add an action into these macros. So in other words, if I take this signal and I try to drop it in here, it just, see what it is, it just changed that first entry point. It didn't even do what I wanted to. I can't load it in there. So eventually everything, what it's telling me is that everything here has to be true. That covers the block 1 area here. And then if that actually is true, then it can activate a sequence of events at this point. So there's rough application. The fine points are a little bit lost. I can't really tell you what that is. And essentially, you know, guys, hope you get some insight for experimentation. Now, because I wrote all this stuff and I've kind of lost you guys probably, let me tell you how I normally do these blocking controls. And this may be sort of an easier method for you guys to apply. And what we'll do is I'll actually start with a new contact entry point. Okay. And I'll run through this really quickly. What I'll do is I'm going to use K1 as my contact point. All right. Now the assumption is here, before you can actually reach K1, this needs to be green. Right. Hope you follow that. Otherwise, a train is basically waiting here on the left-hand side here, and it's never going to reach this contact if these are red, right? It's obvious. So the moment that these things get triggered, the events are going to happen. Now, the first event I want to do is, depending on like the train, if it has 2 sliders or you have multi-unit train, for instance, a lot of times things like these 2 items, they work in unison. Okay. And let me change these to red, and I'll show you what's going on here. Okay, so the idea here is, and this is now finished. I'm going to make little tweaks to that so you guys can follow along afterwards. So the idea is the train is coming through here, and the moment the train reaches this contact point, in other words, it's past the braking module and the signal light, it's going to activate this, and this will prevent any following train, because while this train is now continuing to travel onto this block, it prevents a train from behind from reaching it. It's just going to stop the train right here. Now, this is problematic for 2 reasons. One, if you have like a double-headed unit or a multi-unit train, it's going to automatically stop any following trains once this gets triggered, depending on where you put this, because I can put this contact further down the line if I want to. The other thing it can do is, if you have 2 sliders and it relies on the rear slider for anything, then that rear slider, you know, it's like if you have passenger cars, for instance, this just moment area here is going to turn off the lights temporarily because it's not receiving power to the track. Okay, so now we're going to get into the tweak that I was talking about. So let me get into edit mode. Whoops, come on. System lock up there. Let's try getting in there. There you go. We're going to get in edit mode. Sorry. Edit events. And let's get back into that trigger again. Let's see, where did I put that? Which one was it, since I didn't name it? Okay. FS4. Okay. So what I'm now going to do is I'm actually going to remove this block. Okay, and I use contact tracks. So in other words, as long as this train is on this track, this light's going to be yellow. Okay, and this is what we call an entry point trigger when it gets activated. All right, so now I'm actually going to create another event. And where'd it go? Yeah, I'll just create it here, add, and then we'll call this an exit point. Oops. Exit. All right, just so I can quickly find it. Now I'm going to actually add this contact track here, but instead of being an entry point trigger, in other words, when this turns on, I'm going to now have it set to when it turns off. Okay, and now I'm going to then add my brakes here, so I can show this to you. Okay, so again, in order for this to get activated, the train's going to go through these, past these two brake modules. Now the train first hits, that's the engine will hit the contact and it turns it on. And you see just the signal goes red. Now I don't use these signals to control the track power. These are just sort of, call them dummies if you want. They don't do anything to the layout, but just change the light to green. Once the train completely clears this contact, it's going to turn this off. And you see now my brake module activates, and that's how I control blocks. And it doesn't care which train it is, as long as it works on those. Okay, so in summary there, this is just basically how I do my blocking. There's having all these sort of control factors here for a block macro just didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But yeah, if anybody makes sense of this, shoot us an email, let me know, and it'll just add to further discussion. All right, so that's it. That's it for the braking module, or the blocking macro as far as I know it. Let me stop my share. Are there any questions? Or do you guys have any comments?
That block macro, it seems to me, and I haven't messed with it at all, but it seems to me that it's almost like a shell, and all you're doing is populating the pieces. And all it is going to do is stop the train. It seems like you have to have a manual trigger, like you just showed, to make them go again in that block.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you're correct. It's definitely a shell. Just how you actually apply that. It was, it was a little bit confusing. I wasn't really too sure where I knew to apply it. I could apply it. There's ways that you can apply it to, it reacts to what's going on ahead of the train, or you can apply events as to what's going on behind it. And, it's a case by case thing. I can't really give you guys a list. Things vary. Like in yards, for instance, if I have a staging yard, I use contacts and macros to control what's happening before the train gets to this track. It's like routing. But then the braking modules, that actually applies to what's going behind it, because like I said, K1 actually stops the signals behind the train, not in front of it. So, but yeah, good point on that. It is a shell. So there's a mystery, guys. If, like I said, if I'm lost, you guys might be smarter than me. So.
And right. You actually kind of touched on how do I get rid of this? You actually kind of touched on how we do our brake modules, which is what my article was about. The way we don't actually have the signals controlling any track power, because the brake module is doing it. So basically, the signal is just there for looks, and we do the routing where it changes the signal, but they don't actually control anything, and they are separated from the brake module controller. So that's basically what I get into in mine. Let's see, where are we? Here we are.
Yeah, so I don't want to interrupt your topic. We did have a hand up, so
yeah, Gary had it. Okay, Gary has. Let me stop sharing real quick here. We can talk to Gary. Hey, Gary.
Your microphone is muted. Thanks, Gary. Yeah.
How's that? Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hey.
How's Hawaii?
Sunny, hot.
Yeah.
There. Beautiful. Yeah, it is. Hey, I have a test track that's an oval. Can I use that to try out these micros on by putting in, or do I have to have it hooked up to my main layout?
Well, the thing is, how are you setting up the test track? Is it all going through the test
It's an
output?
oval. It's by itself on a separate table
Okay.
because I do uh, I run trains on it to test them out.
Okay, so I mean, the thing is, there's kind of there's a little bit of ambiguity to your question or your layout that I'm not aware of. So the thing is, you can have a separate loop, but it needs to be controlled by the central station, obviously, right? So as long as you have output control of that, yeah, you can set these things up to run a looping macro. I mean, it's pretty much, if you're going to do it the way that we do it, you would set it up the same way my layout is here, for instance. Maybe you'd have less blocks.
Right, exactly. It's exactly, well, yeah, it's exactly like that, except I don't have any signals.
Okay, yeah. So
Oh,
the thing is, you can do this without, the thing is, you can eliminate some of these elements, for instance, like the signals control areas of the track. You won't be able to have this separation that I do. But as I said, or Rick, as also Rick reasserted, if you don't have signals on it, you can still do this blocking because for us, the signals are strictly aesthetic, so they don't apply to it. Now, and that's so in the earlier part of what I said was, yeah, as long as you're controlling with the CS3, you can do this. Now, Rick has also written an article about how to control sort of these macro controls using, was it just a K84?
Yeah, just a K84.
Yeah, so
It's
just
kind of
K.
an analog routing.
Yeah, there's an analog routing that he's written an article about. But if you really want to do the digital control, then this is the way to do it. Now, again, just to be clear, where the discussion here was about these macros. There's the breaking macro, and there's the let me just kind of, so you have the breaking macro and you have this blocking macro. And frankly, I don't use either one of these because of the method that I've used. And I understand my method because I've been doing it for so long. So whether or not you find it easier or more difficult to do, I can't really answer to that. So
I was hoping to set up a shuttle on my main, but I don't want to mess with any. I have contract tracks on my main.
mhm.
I have 8 of them,
Yeah.
but I want to use the test track, the oval, as a guinea pig.
Oh, no. It's definitely the place to do it. I mean, if you really want to. I mean, even when Rick and I first started messing around with like a slowdown module itself, I just needed a section of track. It just needs to be a straight section of track. And the thing is, each thing that you do on this using these events is going to give you insight into how to approach something else around the layout. So it's not, you're not going to learn everything about everything at once. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, we took it a step at a time. Once we got one brake module to work, then we said, okay, let's fill it out. And sometimes that process brings out another sort of issue, and it's easier to solve that once you kind of get an idea of how each of these little components work.
Yeah, I have a little, I guess it's about 3 by 4.5 oval, and I put it into my test track on my CS3, and I do decoders, because when I get decoders, I run the engine on them to test them out.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, that's definitely good. I think you're on the right track, Gary.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely do that. Yep, sure. And so before we get going with this, we do have a comment here from Carlos. The new macro seems to work on closed loops with only one train in the loop. The way you control blocks seems to not be constrained that way. Yeah, this is definitely true. And I think if we have time, I might try to cover another topic to sort of enhance that idea. The macros can be really touchy and are specific to maybe certain devices, certain locomotives. And this is sort of the benefit, the way that I do this thing here on our method, is because it doesn't care which train is hitting these contact tracks. And I can go into that detail in more detail if we have time. So back to you, Rick. So.
Okay, where are we here? So we had an email, somebody asking us to show how to hook up a brake module, and I thought that was a good way to get into how we start and stop trains. Now, Curtis and I basically both feel the same way. We don't use a signal or a M84 to stop a train unless the M84 is going to stop a train somewhere where we can't see it, like in a Schottenbahnhof. So, excuse me. So there's basically a couple ways to stop trains. One is a manual way with a switch controller. Let's see. Let's get into. No, I don't see it here. With a switch controller and a signal, it'll stop a train. It'll switch the signal and stop the train. You just push the button. It's really simple and basic, and you can see how I covered that in the analog routing newsletter I did. But basically, for any brake module or signal, you need to add insulators for C-track, insulators for any track. And the insulators will go on the red power feed, whether it's 2-rail or 3-rail. You have a red and a black for 2-rail usually, sometimes red and blue for LGB, stuff like that. But the red is generally the one you want to cut the power on to stop the train. And so that's the one that needs the insulators. And you have an insulated section where a signal will allow the current to flow or it'll stop the current flowing. And obviously when it stops it, it will stop the train. But it stops it in a dead stop. It's like turning off a light switch. It just goes and then it just stops. And it's not very prototypical. One thing to note in this article, it mentions in this figure 2 specifically, it shows number 1 is red wire. And they're illustrating number 1 being red wire is in center rail pickup on C-track or Marklin track. And it's also feed wire. So they designate the red wire going into the stop section as number 1 in this figure. But I didn't, that's hard to explain in an article. So I just kind of glazed over it and mentioned that there are 2 red wires that go to a signal and the 2 in the same plug, and one goes outside the insulated section, one goes inside the insulated section, and those are the ones that will cut power to the track. The relay in the signal decoder will allow the current to flow through, or it will cut it off. And it doesn't matter which one of these 2 wires goes inside or outside the dead section, as long as there's one inside and one outside. You put them both inside and it's not going to work. You put them both outside and it won't stop the train. So that's one designation on this. You don't want to use the feed wire of the other number 1. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but over to the left. So with that said, we expanded into a brake module. And in figure 3, basically the brake module, this is how you wire up a brake module to your layout. And you'll see that there's 3 braking sections. Well, not actually braking sections, 3 sections up for a brake module to the track. The section 1 is basically a pulse that will trigger the brake module to, or the slowdown in your locomotive to slow it down. Section 2 is the slowdown section. So you can have that as long or as short as you want, but we recommend at least 2 lengths of track, whether they're 172s or 188s for C-track, just to give the locomotive time to slow down where it looks kind of prototypical, even though 2 sections of track is too short to be prototypical, but it gives it a good sense of slowing down and stopping the way it's supposed to. Section 3 will be a dead section so that the locomotive can't overrun it. And you'll notice that will probably have to adjust your braking delays in your locomotives to get the train to stop within the 2 sections of track, or 3, whatever you use. But that's just trial and error. It's your braking delay. It can get into your the speed of your locomotive, stuff like that. You'll just have to tweak it. But here in figure 3, this is a basic setup for a brake module to the track. It needs power going into it so that it can allow the power to flow to the dead section, or stop power to the dead section. And so that's why it needs power. There's no decoder in this brake module. So it is an analog device that we control digitally. And the way we control it digitally is, well, you can control it analog with a 72720 control box, and that would be a push button on your controller. Push buttons are okay if you want to, if you want to just slow down and stop a train manually. You can do this. You always know where the button is. You know which button it is on the control panel. It's always easily accessible. But to stop a train digitally, say in a route for a central station, the easiest way is just to plug in your signal. Your signal will plug directly into the brake module. Figure 5 will show you how it plugs into the brake module, and the signal decoder will actually turn on and off the brake module. So when you're programming your routing events, you program your signal to turn red, which will automatically turn on your brake module. You don't have to do any additional programming in there. It will just do it automatically when the signal's red, and it will turn it off when the signal's green. Now, what Curtis came up with, and it made sense to me, was in your central station, you can program a delay. And so what we had done on Curtis's first layout, now he's done on a second layout, is we program a delay in between the signal changing and the brake module turning off. And so we control the brake module with an M83. It will plug in right where it says decoder, just like it did for the signal. But now the signal is separated, and it basically makes it a very expensive aesthetic light, because you're paying for a digital signal that you can control in a route, but then it will not actually control anything at all. It will just change colors. So we like this realism because as one way we explain it is, you'll read in the article that a train leaves on a schedule. It doesn't leave just because the signal's green. So in real life, the signal turns green, but the engineer has to wait for his time to leave whenever it's scheduled to leave. So you can add a little bit of realism for people that will notice. Most people probably won't notice, or they'll think, oh, the signal's green, your train stopped, you need to give it a push, which I've done that on a friend's layout. I programmed his station to have delays. It's a 6-line station, and I see the signal change, and I have actually gone up there and pushed the locomotive, even though I did the programming on it. So with the brake module separated from the signal, you can program a delay. You have your signal turn green. You can program however seconds or minutes until the brake module turns off through the M83, and off the train goes. So it does give a little bit of realism if you have friends that pay attention to it. But being that most of us drive a car, you think, okay, the light's green, let's go. So most people aren't going to notice that. That's basically it's a short article. That's basically it. A couple of little details that we did. Once again, an M84 will do the same thing. You can stop a train, let's just say in a Schottenbahnhof or in a tunnel. It will stop the train. It will stop it without a brake module, because you don't need to go through the expense of buying a brake module if you can't see the train slow down. You don't need a signal unless you happen to have a signal outside the tunnel. So that's another expense that you wouldn't need. Once again, with the signals, I believe you can hook up a startup signal. I would have to actually research this. I know you can hook up a startup signal.
There's an issue with some of the hobby signals. I don't know if it still applies because the startup signals had that hardwired plug-in and it needed a hand control, right?
And those plug directly into a M84. So I believe you can use an M84 for this, because I used an M84 in my analog routing to do this, and I did hook up a brake module. So I think you can supplement an M84. I would have to go back and review everything.
I think you're right. I think you're right. But isn't the I think there's a difference in the signal lights, or did they match it? Because the colors used to be slightly different.
The startup signals, they don't have a warm white LED, they have an amber LED. And that's why we never use them. But it is basically just a light with a head on it. Even brand X can be used. Analog signals can be used. The old 7188s from the 70s and 80s. I think it's 7188s. Any of those first generation signals that are incandescent bulbs and a solenoid, they can be hooked up to an M83 as a signal, which you can go back and read. And I think it was, I'd have to look when that article was. I did the article on how to hook those up. And I mentioned it here somewhere. I know where it is. July, August, 2021. So you can hook up a analog signal and have it work, and then you're saving costs there. But at any rate, there's more ways to do this that I didn't cover every combination in this article. And if there's any questions, you can certainly shoot us an email, and I'll think through the process and give you an answer if you think you can have a new way of hooking up a brake module. But I just covered the basics on this little endeavor of ours, where I kind of went down the rabbit hole a little bit. I tried not to go too deep.
Well, that's pretty good. I didn't really it's been a while since I actually considered using like the hobby signals. It makes sense if you're just going to use signals aesthetically. I think the reason why I went still with the more expensive digital lights is because the colors are more vibrant. They were definitely different. Like the green was a different shade.
Well, you can also edit the CVs in the signals, the semaphores and the light signals, where you can have the lights change slowly or quickly, whatever your preference is. And the arms in the semaphores, you can edit if they go slow or fast, and that gives more realism. So there is a little bit more to it than just wasting a digital signal. You can.
Yeah, there's definitely those features. Yeah, that's always a good point. So, okay, you did have a question in regards to your diagram. In figure number 5, where do the wires for number 3, and I'm assuming number 5 go? He actually has a number 5 and a $3 sign. But I think he actually means number 5 and number 3.
Well, dollar sign's number 4.
I don't know where your $3 go, but it goes in my pocket.
We've got to give you a cut. So what are we talking about? Figure. Which
right
figure?
There. It's just at the bottom. It's the one on the bottom. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the question again?
Is that right? Let's look at the question again. I think you just hit the question. Let me open it up again. Number 5 and number 3. Yeah. Figure 5.
And what about it? What wire? Because I only have this screen up. I can't see the.
Okay. Well, can you zoom in on the screen? Oh, so he's looking at the 2 wire connections at the very bottom, the yellow and the red.
Oh, okay. So those are just going to be what that is, and I mentioned it in the article, it says max, I think it says 18-volt AC, and that can be track power, or it can be a secondary power source. If you're running all your lights on a different circuit to save power, to save track power, you can certainly do that. So either it's going to be track power, which is what I generally use because these are LED signals. And even when the signal does change, it's a momentary pulse. So you're not really robbing enough track power unless you have 100 of these working off your track. So you don't have to worry too much about it. Yellow would be the red, I believe, and the what is it? Green and red would be the brown, I believe. Basically how that goes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're is that everything there? Any questions on that topic?
Yeah.
I do have some somebody wants to see some examples through the YouTube channel. They were asking about how I kind of do the blocking actually in a sighting or staging yard. Well, mostly for sighting. There's also, I think there was also a little bit of a segue based on your topic, and that's regarding the block macro, because we have had some questions on that. So I will address those. Let me see how quickly I can get through that. We do have an extra question here. Dean had any news regarding the Milwaukee Train Fest? So I believe that is in effect for us, right? I think we're going to Milwaukee in November, right?
November.
So, okay. All right. So let me share my screen again. So I have a question regarding blocking, I guess, rather than just the loop. What happens if you have a sighting? And there's a couple parts to this, and I've just kind of shown a sighting display here. Let me see. Okay, good. I have no events here. So essentially, we have a couple of issues that you might have to consider, and it really kind of depends on how you want to approach a sighting. The way this is laid out, the train's coming in from the left side, and you got an option of going to one of these two lines, and what happens like an exit point. So I'm not going to apply any braking modules. Well, we can if we want to, but just kind of go through my process here. So one approach, well, obviously I need to direct a train well before it gets into the one of these two lines. So what we're going to do here is to show you the setup. I'm actually going to have a contact point now. Again, my contact points usually occur after the signal. So just by tradition, I'm putting it here. Okay. And so that's sort of trick one. And I'll give you an option of what we can do here. So I'm going to cut off the edit of the track, and we'll go right into event right away here. So what happens when a train reaches K1? And so let's make that trigger here. Okay, and this will be my K1 position. So it's basically once my train activates this. Now the first thing I want to do is I really want to figure out whether or not there's a train here or here. And usually it's the main line. So what we're going to say is, like, if the main line is blocked, whoops, it's too far down. So if S3 is blocked, and you can see this is an action right now, it's not really evaluating anything. Okay, so it's only going to change the light from red to green, which is not what we want. So here's the first thing when you run into this, and you might run into it when you're changing profiles like I do, is we need to go into the system settings and scroll down till you see the track protocols and operations, and you want to make sure you activate the events extended mode. And obviously I didn't read that, I just know what it does. Go ahead and click it. So make sure that's check marked here. All right, so back to our event. This is our F1 event. I'm going to edit mode here. All right, so now what I'm going to do is actually, let's see what's here. We're going to redrag this in here. Okay, and it's still a position. Now you can see this has cleared this up where I can now set it for a condition. Okay, and what that means is that it's saying is once it hits this and it's showing if this signal is red, it's asking if this signal is red because I can actually change it to ask if this signal is green. Okay, but again, we're looking at whether or not this track is occupied. Okay, so we want to say if it's occupied or there's a train stop there, it's going to be red. Okay, if it is red, then what I want to do is I'm going to redirect my train so it goes onto the siding. Okay, this is just basically one approach. This is how you divert a train. So now we have there's one example, and forgive me for kind of stuttering on this because it's sort of there's a lot that can be going on here. It's sort of a spider web of information that, it's going to come at you all at once because, I'm trying to do this in a fast fashion here. The other way that we kind of do this is, and this is because I use contact tracks, and we'll go back out here and we're going to go to edit events mode here, or not events. I'm going to actually go back to the trackboard page. I'm going to add more contacts here and I'll explain why. So I'm going to add 2 here and I'm going to add 3 here. Now again, these are contact tracks. These are going to be the entry points for when a train enters into a yard. There's 2 ways I can do this because it depends on how long you want to actually make these contact points. There's one where I can actually put them all the way up here and just have like this one long contact. In my staging yard, for instance, my contact actually spans about 4 feet. And it just depends on the trains that you're running, and sometimes it depends on the timing issues that you have. So I might put them all the way up here. So the idea here is, one idea is, and I'll leave one here just kind of show you why I have maybe an extra contact here. I mean, you might actually have this instance where I have 2 contacts on a depot station. Okay. So, and I'll just do it this way, just kind of show you the examples here. So now we're going to go back into our edit events mode and I'll edit this. So in this instance, I used the signal to determine if there's a train on the line. Now we're assuming that, a train is either going to stop at the depot or it's going to run all the way through. In this sense, what we're looking at is if a train is stopped in the yard. So if I do something like this, I'm actually going to reverse K1. I'm not going to read for the depot station just because my diagrams where everything's put there. Let's say a train is actually stopped here at this line, right? Obviously, I'd want the train to go to the other open line rather than hit that train. So what I would do is, rather than having the signal be red, I would rather actually like to read whether or not there's a train occupying the station, because it's a little bit more reliable in some instances, especially like I had old signals that they would fail to run because there was a limitation with the old digital signals. So now what you can see is, we'll actually change this so it makes a little bit more sense logically. So essentially, if the train is coming in from this block here, because remember K1 is the one that got triggered, that's this one here, it got triggered. It's going to now see if the train is occupied on this line, then it's going to switch this turnout to go straight. And that way it avoids that clearance point. Okay, so hopefully you can follow that logic there. The next step, or which is sort of a different step here, is what is going on with K2? Why do I have K2 at the entry point? K2 is the reason why I have K2 is that basically, let's say a train is going on here and it makes for a nice little control feature. So essentially, this thing is set to read when the train makes contact with it. And I actually want to use the reverse. I want to actually show when the train clears that turnout. Okay. So let's just disregard this right stuff. I have a train that's moving onto this line and it's now reaching this entry point where this contact, and just kind of modifying this a little bit. I generally will have this contact right as soon as I can after the turnout. So it's going to be really placed tight after this. You can space it out, and you might need to make it a little longer sometimes. But the idea is that, going back to our events on K2. Okay, so let's read K2. Yeah, I'm going to drag this in here. So if you follow this logic here, and let me get out of edit mode so I can actually control the layout. Sorry, I keep forgetting I'm in stop mode. Okay, so a train exits here, right? So it goes off, and once it reaches contact with this, remember I might have a long train. I don't know how long it's going to be. While this is on, I can assume that my train is still on this track, this turnout. As soon as it clears, it shows me that I can switch the train behind it to the next line. So there's a way you can reroute a train behind a train if you need to. So there's a couple examples right there for quick routing on a depot station. Now at the exit point, now the thing is, you may be wondering, well, how do I release a train out of the station yard? That it gets a little tricky. Some people might use this pre-blocking to release a train, and that's probably poorly described for you. Generally, what happens is, the way I work it is I use one of these triggers that are actually in the yard. So let's say, obviously if I have a train here and it's stopped and I've got a train coming in, what I can also do here, and we're going to go back to this trigger here. I'm actually going to use this signal here just for kind of clarity. Come on, go here to green. And just kind of give you guys a chance to see this. I'm going to put a 2-second delay here so you know what's kind of moving without it being immediate. So let's kind of preset our conditions here. Close that. I have a train waiting on this line. I have a train that just left this signal here, right? It's coming on here and it's going to make contact with that train. And as soon as it clears this, whoops, did I do that right? Yeah, no, I didn't. Okay, sorry, let me reset this again. A train's coming down here. It passes through this turnout. It makes contact with this contact. And once it clears, it allows it to divert, and it changes this light to green so that this train can now leave that station. So you can alternate trains this way. Now, I think normally what you can do, just another quick, remember this used an exit point. It's when the train clears this contact, okay? You can actually take it a different route if you want to. Go to edit this, I'll delete that really quickly. I'm gonna add one more event. This is also gonna use K2, but only this time it's gonna use it when the train hits that contact. And this is where I'm gonna release this signal to green. Okay. So now you can kind of see what's going on step by step. Again, we'll set up our conditions. I have a train waiting here. A train is, again, it's leaving this point. The moment it makes contact with this K2, this entry point, it's going to release this light. You see how it goes to green? And so that still means my train is still on this turnout. Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to derail. This train's going to leave. Nothing's going to happen. And the moment this train clears, it sets it to red. And then even at this exit, I can also set this light back to red if I want to. That's one way that we can do it. Another way that I've done it is basically because I want to make sure, like, as long as the train is on this track, this next block here, I'll show you that really quickly. I need to edit the trackboard page. I'm going to put a contact out here. Now this contact is basically going to be like this. There's going to be another signal here, for instance, because this is a whole new block here. And what I've done, or actually even this, I might have done it this way. So essentially how that works is, let's set up a new contact. I'll put K4 in here, and I'm going to use this. Whoops. Sorry, wrong location. Clear that. I'm going to put K4 all the way over here. And this is going to be an exit trigger. And this is really kind of handy to do it this way if you have a lot of lines in a staging yard, for instance. So, if a light is red and I change it to red, nothing's going to happen. There's no harm, no foul. But if it's green, I always want it to turn red. So how this works is whatever train leaves this line, whether it's this one or this one or both, once the train is on this and once it clears that, it sets both my signals to red, and I have guaranteed stoppage in the yard. So hopefully you guys kind of get a sense of how I program through the staging yard. I know there was an article about it, and the gentleman was asking me about an article, but I figured I could cover it in the webinar really quickly for you. If you still have questions, feel free to send us an email at digital@marklin.com. I do have a question. He used M contact tracks, one standard length with 2 cuts, which is often too short for sensing. Is C contact track segment longer? That's a good question. Contact tracks you have a couple of approaches to contact tracks. And I think Rick can definitely answer this to some degree with a little bit more efficiency than I do, because he's more familiar with M track. In C track, you can use I think they're the, what is it, 995 pieces. What's the first 2 digits? I forget.
4.
Yeah. So basically, if it was C track, and I don't know whose view you've got, you've got a bigger picture on mine, but
any piece of C track can be a contract track.
Yeah, you have the end part. You can buy those packages, which are the end part contacts. Those are the ones with the pre-cut slots in it. But the way we do, we just take any kind of C track and we just separate the 2 outer rails. Now, Rick can answer this. The M track, I think the outer rails are already separated, are they not? Or they
not on C track? No, you just snip the little bridge and.
Yeah, but he's asking about M track. So
M track. No, you need to. There are certain sections of M track you can buy, or at the time could buy, that were insulated. They usually came with what is it? The grade crossings, so you can extend the grade crossing. They're harder to find. Definitely harder to find. C track is much more user friendly, so I would recommend using C track if at all possible. M track is good to use if you're using it in tunnels or your Schottenbahnhofs where you can't see it. But C track can be, any piece of C track can be a contact track, with the exception of turnouts. But and you can make the contacts as long or as short. Well, you don't want them too short, but you can make them as long as you want. So we highly recommend C track. K track is, I believe K track comes insulated. The rails are insulated from each other. I could be wrong on that. It's been so long since I've worked with K track.
I think that's true. I think people have confirmed that. It was always M track that was mystifying, because I never really.
M track is tougher because it is all metal.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I guess the only thing, if I want to cover that, let's see. We have a question on YouTube. Can a bigger monitor be connected to the CS3 to give you more area to work with? That is well, here you go. These shared screens are, and I'll just go to my shared screen. As a matter of fact, actually, let me go to a bigger screen here so you can actually see how that all works. So here we're actually using, in this instance, we're using the VNC viewer, and I could make it bigger. but it just expands the screen that you displayed on the CS3. Now, let's see, I forget how to get back to the smaller screen. Now, there is the other method, and I will have to open up the browser, and let me get back to you in a second. I'll have to open up the browser so we can look at it. Let's see, 2.168.57. Okay, and I will, let's see. And that is the control screen when you type in the basically IP address for your CS3. And you can see it's connecting now. And this scales up. So yeah, you can do it if you're using a control button on the browser. So that's definitely one method to do it. Now, whether or not, yeah, I guess you can still kind of do that. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely this way. And if you didn't catch that, it's basically when you type in your IP address, you'll get this screen. The demonstration, I usually use the screen server setup. That's this one here. But to get to the bigger screen, you can hit the control button on the right, and then you'll have sort of like these zoomable functions. And, you know, I haven't really used this too much, but it's definitely there. So, matter of fact, it's not showing. Oh, I don't have any locomotives in there, so let's add a locomotive just on a whim. Whoops. Yeah, we don't.
Basically, there's no plug-in for an extra monitor. No, for the central station.
Well, it's yeah. If it's all going through your computer, your laptop. I mean, I've got it connected to my network. Did I not select the locomotive? Let's pick one locomotive. Let's see what happens. There you go. Yeah, I've never actually played with this. So
Yeah, it's just like playing with the central station.
Yeah, but it's this is where you do have, obviously I can't scale these control sides down. It's still the same size, but whether or not this actually does what you want, it gets really weird that you have, because look how big these icons are. They don't need to be this big for a screen, if you're going to zoom in. And I'm on what I don't even remember what size these monitors are. So, but yeah, there you have it. Compared to the VNC viewer screen, let's see. I think you can put them both up here. So this is the VNC viewer screen.
Yeah, and Ben says browser CS3 screen limits functionality like programming. Not so useful. Yes, it's only for control. Yeah. It's not for programming. The VNC allows you to do more programming.
Yeah, you can't really get into all these event features, or you can't really get into all these edit features and configuration features. But look at the icon difference. So this one here at the top, that's the control screen. Even if so I can actually zoom out. So yeah, if you zoom out, you can kind of get it that way. So you do have acreage that way. But think of it this way: this is an operational mode setting, whereas the VNC viewer, it's a good for edit mode settings. If you want to edit anything out, use the VNC viewer. But if you need actually control, because even if you look at the top of the screen here, your menus are different. You have your home page, your track block view, and all that stuff. You don't have your system settings. You don't have, you don't have your track board. You don't have, like the edit events. You don't have your help window. Not that we use it, but hey, it's all there. So, all right. Thank you. Good questions. Oops, cancel that. Are there any books in English about usage, operating, setting for using the mobile station 2?
No, not any books. Basically, I'm trying to get my locos to run.
Okay, while you do that, well, somebody asked what the VNC was. So.
Well, the mobile station is kind of meant to be kind of intuitive, but yeah, I kind of don't like saying that because it doesn't mean it's intuitive for everybody. So, um, being that Curtis and I work with Central Station an awful lot, we understand the mobile station too, and how to get to things in it. Just running locomotives, if they're MFX, that should be fairly simple. Some people may have a little bit of trouble understanding the menu when you're entering a dip switch decoder locomotive, but once it's in, it's in. It's just a matter of learning it. It's not really that hard to learn. It's a fairly simple controller. But so any book that would be published would be very small, very short.
Okay, so a question, gentleman asked what the VNC is that I was referring to. The VNC is, and I'll go back to the share window. Okay, so basically when you go to this page after typing the IP address on your web browser, under your system setting, rather than using the control button as we've been talking about, you need to go to the screen server setting. And you can start the CS3. In other words, the CS3 is going to act as a server. And mine's already started. That's why it's only showing is stop the server. Now it says in step 2, open your VNC viewer. You want to use this link right here where it says Real VNC Viewer. If you go to like realvnc.com, for instance, instead of using this link, it's going to probably ask you if you want to sign up for subscription or pay for the service. You don't have to. You just use this VNC viewer and the application icon. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. It just, it's like, let's click on it. Just kind of show you where it is. It takes you, just download the VNC viewer. It's going to load up into your system. And the VNC viewer basically is the application I've been using, which is stop share or new share. I used to keep forgetting the new share built window. The VNC viewer, when you open it, looks like this. VNC Connect, and you can see I actually have 2 IP numbers that I've used to connect to the CS3, and this is the one that we were currently using. I click on it, and it just loads up this screen here. And how you activate that is, if you don't have this, yours is going to be blank. You just type in your IP number, the same one you used in the browser. And by the way, once you start, did it again. Where am I going? Yeah.
Yep.
Once you start this screen where it says, you can actually close the browser itself. You don't actually have this browser open. You don't have to have it open. It doesn't kill the process. Your CS3 is already set up to run as a browser. And then all you need to do is you just need to go to the VNC viewer screen and then type in your IP address up here. I can do it again, 168. But it keeps a record. Once you open one up, it keeps a record down there of what you've opened. And then, and then it's just simply opens up this edit screen. All right. So that is that question. That's what VNC is. To show how to set the screen server to start up on the CS3 startup. So it does not to be started each time. You by default, you have to reassign it every time you start your CS3. It's not going to do it automatically. So you have to do exactly so the question was how to set the screen server to start up on the CS3 startup so it does not need to start each time. I don't believe that's actually a setting in here. You can't just automatically set it up to be a server. And it could be a CAN bus setting. That's a good question because we've never really looked at it. But as far as I know, there was never a setting where you can automatically set it up as a server in server mode. Yeah, I don't have anything like that in our settings. He says he does a way he doesn't remember it, and I've never seen it. Let's see, back in here. I do not see that setting at all. Settings CAN. Bootloader upweight. Start CAN gateway on automatic. I'm not kind of sure what I'm looking at. So
Sean has a quick question that I'll answer. It says, do you turn off the CS3 overnight or do you leave it running? We always turn off our CS3.
yeah, I leave it on overnight if I forget to actually power it down. I mean, I'll shut it in shutdown mode and I'll accidentally leave it on, but it's better to turn it off or, just kill the power to it.
Shut it down and kill the power.
Yeah, because you're just basically leaving it in sort of a weird sleep mode. If you had issues with it, who knows what's going to happen. And frankly, I think we've actually had some users who, like they live in areas where they have lightning storms. There is always that potential that, a lightning storm, even though it's kind of an exaggeration, it's not necessarily going to blow up your CS3, but it can have the potential to sort of corrupt the operational data in your CS3. And what I mean by an operational data, for instance, is it might actually do some weird thing where it alters a functioning bit on one of the locomotives. So then rather than it running at, a proper speed, it's doing something really weird. And it just kind of prevents that. It doesn't affect like the CS3 naturally, because think of it this way, everything on your CS3 is running on an operational sort of memory base. And if it isn't completely shut down, that memory base, that operational memory base, doesn't get a chance to clear out and reset itself. And if you have corruption in that, then it's going to continue to operate on that operational memory. So it's a good thing to shut down after you, or kill power after you shut down your layout. So this setting here that I'm showing, it's possibly the server setting, but I don't think it is. Where it's set in broadcast mode. There's no explanation for us. Somebody in Germany actually has that answer. They can let us know. But as far as I know, yeah, the destination address might be the IP number that you set for it. Haven't played with it. That's kind of a good question regarding whether or not it can be booted up as a server right away. So, one more question.
Yeah, Ben had a question here. He emailed us and I read it, but I wasn't going to answer while we're doing a webinar on an email.
Is there a way to let the CS3 run train 1 3 times before stopping, and then train 2 runs 3 times, and so forth? The current automation is 1 train, 1 loop, then next. Let's see. Let's go to the viewer here. And this might be just a matter of trying to clarify what the question is here. So let me restore here. And let me pick event issues. Let's see. Okay, so I guess the question is, are you, like, let's say you have this setup. Are you thinking, is a train going to run around the loop 3 times before it reaches, let's say there's a sighting here. Before it has a sighting and the next train loops
Share
around.
the screen.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. This might be a bad example too.
I think it means more like hitting a contact 3 times and then does something else. Like a counter.
Counter operations like that where you're actually counting down something. No, you can't really do that. So in other words, if your question is, let's say there's a staging yard here, maybe I need to draw that in if that's going to make sense to anybody. So let's add, oops, dummy. Edit, let's add article list. Let's add a turnout. I actually have 2 turnouts, excellent. Okay, edit trackboard page. So where do I put these? So I have one turnout here. And we'll have another turnout here. This is really poorly drawn. Whoops. Let's get rid of this. I had my phone muted. Why are you ringing? That's my alarm. All right. So there you go. Don't worry about the details. So the idea is that I'm wondering is, are you asking, let's say there's a train waiting on the siding. Excuse the drawing. It was just for the moment. If a train can actually go around the loop 3 times before the second goes. My quick answer to that would be no. There's no way to actually count how many trains is going to go around a loop, especially if you were, not without extensive, in-depth kind of logic evaluations and doing really weird things with the event programming. But in simple form, no, I wouldn't even attempt it. It's just too much work. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. Let's see. Large manual book has information on mobile. Okay. So we did have a tip. Somebody mentions that there's mobile station information in the Essential Station 3 book, the book titled The Controlling Digitally with the Central Station 3.
I knew there was stuff in there. We actually edited that book, Curtis and I, but I didn't see that it does have information about the central station, the mobile station, but you're buying a whole book that's kind of revolves around the central station. So I didn't really think it valid to mention. Didn't want to just sell a book.
Yeah. You don't want to promote Marklin product.
Yeah, maybe that's it. No, it just seemed like overkill. It's literally anything that's in there is in the manual. So, and the manual comes with the mobile station. So, and we're always here to help.
Okay, so there was a comment regarding whether or not we can start this in the system. So there's a system screen server.
Oh, on the web browser.
Oh, on the web browser. Well, that's the web browser. Yeah. Let's go to the web browser really quick here. Do sharing screen. I'm going to screen 1. Okay, so you can see the screen there. 22.168.1.57. Whoops. Error. Extra number there on the IP. Yeah, you're talking about this. And let's see. All right. So yeah, you can. But I guess that's as long as you're using this browser or this. If you have a dedicated computer, yeah, I guess you can do this. That's a good setting. It's not done through the CS3. So yeah, if you wanted to always activate that without having to go through, I guess that's assuming you're just trying to avoid doing this button here. But it's kind of minute. I mean, I don't have the browser up all the time. I don't, it's up to you. You can do it either way if you need to. So thanks for that. That's a good tip. All right. Anything else? Let's see. Let me check YouTube really quick.
Let's play guess where Rick is this week or this month.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to guess where I'm at?
Yeah,
Obviously-
before we do have a question here, maybe you can answer.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever heard of the built-in turnout decoders making a buzzing noise while connected to the CS3?
No.
Guess he's got something buzzing. He's not really too sure what's going on.
I know that some of them buzz when they activate. Some buzz more than others, but
I would dare say, make sure it's the turnout decoder that's buzzing.
it could only be the decoder or the or maybe the lantern for some reason, because the motor doesn't have power all the time.
Yeah, every once in a while I get noises out of the layout. I have no idea where they're coming from. And if it really drives me nuts, I'll take the one suspected element out, see if it still buzzes after I power up the layout. So, yeah, that's, I think that's the only thing I can kind of suggest at that point. Yeah, I don't know if anybody really has it. The other way you can look at it is I think there's enough elderly folk who are into the hobby that can't hear that stuff anyways.
Well, I was going to say do the old trick like you do in your car, turn the radio up.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have a stereo, turn it up, or if you have a TV running, just turn that up. You'll never hear the buzzing noise. I'm sure that doesn't help you. All right. Is there anything else? I think we covered quite a bit. I do kind of have one topic here, and I don't want to get too long in the tooth with that one. Let's go back to the viewer. Okay, so there's the viewer. Let me restore. Actually, no. So looking at this layout here, and I'm just going to kind of quickly address breaking macro sort of issue here, and whether or not you guys run into this issue, it is common, and people always kind of ask me about this. So I'm going to address it again. And, and the thing is, it is difficult to address because, unless there's a clear example to give you guys, you might not get it. So essentially what's happening, and this is the brake module. And there's a sort of an underlying issue to using these modules sometimes. This is the brake module setup, and I've only filled out the things that were sort of necessary to actually kind of prove the point here. Essentially, your first container, and I need to go into edit mode. Your first container assigns a locomotive, so you can pick whatever locomotive is in your system. I only have 2 on this demo setup, so it is sort of dedicated for this locomotive. And you have basically these contact settings, which are fairly explanatory. The pause flag container is a little weird because it's just not a very common or good name to give something that you're not too sure what it does. So I think essentially nothing happens until this actually first makes contact. But which is weird if that's the definition, because by nature, my events are actually triggered by this event. So in other words, once this contact gets triggered, it activates the brake module evaluation. So somebody sets up a brake, you set up a brake module to operate this one train, right? But it needs to be commanded by a contact point. Okay, and this is the contact point here, the K1. And you can kind of see that here. K1 is my contact point. K2 is the point where it actually starts to slow down and so forth. So this is our layout structure, and this is just the basic loop. Okay, and this is different from the way that I've set up braking macros, and this was explained earlier in the webinar here. The way this system works, and apply power to the layout, and let's say the train is running at this speed, whatever, it doesn't really matter. The train is going around from the left side here. It's going to hit contact 1, sort of knowing it's entering into the braking section. It needs to sort of be occupied. Now, this could be wrong. I'm not exactly sure of what the pause flag container is for, but the moment the train reaches contact 2, it's going to start the slow down process. Now, the way braking module in this slows down is you're using the acceleration braking delay that the locomotive is set for. But what's going to happen here is the speed control. It's not going to gradually drop. It just goes right down to 0. Okay. So this is how this braking module works. Now, the thing is, there's sort of an emergency stop container here at the end. Okay. So this is the braking section, and this is sort of hold section. And there's also an overlap container and an emergency container. I'm not exactly sure what those do. It just seems kind of like there's a lot of redundant functions. But the inherent problem here is, remember, this is controlled by K1, K2, and K3, right? That's in this block too. So now we have a secondary block here in front of S2, and in order for me to want to have kind of controls with that, you need I need at least 3 more contacts, right? And let's make sure that I'm set for the right one. So I'm going to add 3 more contacts. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Is this right? And it just defaulted. Okay, so now they're all listed under link S2. That's what these are. Okay. And I'm going to add them into the layout in much the same fashion. Whoops. Go away. Edit track word page. I really kind of hate that we can't scale these up or minimize them. Okay. Scroll down. So I need to add those 3 contacts, which 4 is all the way over here. So I'm going to add 5, 6, and then there's a 7. Okay, I'm not even going to hide that. Just kind of line them up so you guys can make sense. I'm going to roughly line them up. They're not going to be perfect. Okay. So at this point, you might have a train over here and you want it to stop on the second block, right? And we already have a brake module set up. So I'll have a new event. And I'm going to actually have, where to go? That's FS2. That's this one here. Open. Oh, dang it. Welcome to the constant button pushing until you get the right thing you need. Where'd it go? Oh, it's all the way down here. It re-shifts things. This is kind of another annoying thing that it does once in a while. Real estate. So K5 is going to be my triggering event. God, dang it. Where'd it go? I moved it. Oh, come on. Edit events. Oh, you know what? Am I in track mode? Edit track mode. There you go. That's why. So let's put this contact back where it belongs. Get out of edit track mode. Now we can go into edit events mode. Open up F2. Close this. Make this my trigger. So it's K5 is now my trigger for entry point. And I'm going to do something which may be part of the issue. So we're going to add the brake module here, assuming that it's going to stop that train. Okay, so let's kind of test this again. I'll put our speed up to here, right? K1's our first trigger. K2's our stop. No problem. Stops the train. Now I use the secondary trigger K5 to activate the brake module again. So my train's running again. K5 here. K6 goes on. Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to stop the train. And you might ask, well, why is that? Well, because brake module is only being controlled by K2. That's the only thing that's going to stop this train. This action right here stops the train. And you just see it just did it here on the left, right? You just activate it here and it stops the train. That's this module here. So the thing is, if you want to actually stop the train using all these brakes, you're going to have to build a brake module for each one of these stop sections just to address this one train. And if you have more than one train, well, you're going to have to make these brake modules for each of those trains. And the other problem there is that, again, K2 is always going to stop this train. And even if your train's out here or all the way over here, anytime a train behind it is going to hit this K2 button, or that's 1 and 2, it's going to stop this train. So there's this real issue here that, the brake modules are not really the efficient way to do stuff. And this is why I use the method that I showed you previously in the email. So that was kind of a haphazard explanation. Hopefully those guys who asked those questions are going to follow it. But yeah, it's a different approach, and it really is kind of a long-winded way to go. So sorry, guys. Sorry for that. Anyways, anything else? I think we've covered any kind of weird details that we needed to cover. I don't think there are any subsequent questions. Anything you want to notice or report?
No, nothing out of the ordinary.
All right. Well, any final questions for you guys? Anything you have that you want to know?
Any YouTube questions?
Let's check who's around here. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this webinar. We appreciate you guys coming in.
Pretty short and simple.
Yep. Yeah, your volume cuts in and out. You're missing that microphone that you have at home, don't you?
Yeah, I know. I don't know how loud to speak right now.
Did you? I can't remember if he actually finished the conversation and where you were today. Did he finish?
Nobody took a shot at me. So
we can create a poll. Where is Rick?
Where's Rick? Where's Waldo?
Where is
Waldo? Gary says nice train room. Yeah, well, that's not mine.
Yeah, his little train. Yeah, where do you see a train room that empty?
Yeah. As you know, I would have the walls filled.
Where do you not see boxes of trains? Waldo's in Hawaii.
Nice. Nope, I am actually at the Marklin headquarters here in Missouri right now. I'm at the warehouse. And I'm doing the warranty work that they have here. They flew me out to do their warranty work. This layout right here is a factory layout that the factory sent us. And well, there's to it. We're going to make this digital, Curtis and I, or just me, depends on who's here to do it. We're going to make it digital. It's analog right now, but when we get some time, we're going to make it digital. And we have to do some track work on it because it did get shipped over from Germany. So, oh, Dean says to say hi to Stacy. I could yell to her right now, literally, but I won't. So,
all right,
that's about it.
Well, I hope you have when are you getting back?
I fly back on Friday.
Friday. So we got a new messenger. All right. Well, listen, guys. Thanks a lot for coming. We're always challenged by what to write about. We've covered a lot of stuff over the last 3 7 years, I think, almost.
7 years now. I think
Yeah.
7 years.
We started,
Last month.
yeah, we started at the tail end of 2015. So if you think about it, we've covered at least, we did 3 articles at the end of
Six times
2015,
seven.
and this is our 3rd article for this beginning of this year. So we've got 3. Is that 6 or 7 full years of?
Oh, we have 6 full years and 3 issues.
Yeah. So
45.
well, no, you're talking calendar years. I'm actually talking about if you just count the actual issues.
Newsletters. 45.
Yeah. So I mean, it equates to years. We just started in mid year.
3 the first year and then 6 every other year.
Yeah. If you read those first 3, you read those first 3 years, you figure out how dated all their information is now.
Yeah, and that's 2 topics for each newsletter.
Yeah, we started out with
That's 90 topics.
The CS2 in, I think when it was 2016. I think when the first CS3s came to us.
Oh yeah, the CS3 came out in 2016. Yeah, we got our first beta unit, I think, late.
So, all right, little hint down memory lane there for us. Your microphone is just dropping out. It's like,
I'm sure it's terrible.
You're talking through your, well, I won't say what you're talking through. We usually talk through that anyway, so I don't really know what to say.
You should be used to it. Translate for everyone, can you?
Yeah. All right, guys. Listen, it was a lot of fun. Glad you had some questions for us. Look forward to our next article. Again, let's see. Denver Garden Railway show at the end of the month. And then I think we have Eurowest out here in California. And then I guess NMRA, wherever that is, in August.
Outside of St. Louis.
We do have a quick question. Is there preferred connector protocol? Man, you just asking all these nerd questions. Or B for S88 cables. I'm putting one in to go outside.
S88 cables are just network cables.
Yeah, just Ethernet, whatever you want to use for Ethernet that's weatherproof enough for you. That's all you really need to do, because that's all they are. So Cat 5, Cat 6, or whatever.
So yes, if you have something you want us to write about, we can, at least we will
look at it.
Yeah, so we'll read it. And if it's something that we can write about, yeah, send us a topic suggestion. Because we're running out of topics. There's only so much you can cover with a central station and mobile station, and we're not going to get into how to build scenery or structures, but
yeah, the only way I can stretch this out is if I take one of your nerd topics and just separate it into micro topics. That's why everything of mine goes for an hour. Or 8 pages of documentation. So you've got your manuals right there. I should have written a book.
Yeah, well, nobody wants to read it because it puts you to sleep, just like a manual.
Well, that's what reading's for. Put you to sleep. Okay, all right. Well, we should probably end it here. We've already lost half our viewers because we've said goodbye 4 times already. So, listen, thanks again. We'll see you guys. Take care. Sign off. See you, Rick. Safe journeys. Later.